he's not in the habit of starting wars. He's very proud about his record of ending wars and not starting wars. So I don't think we're going to see the 82nd Airborne go into Gaza to join the Israelis in the fight.
The return of Donald Trump appears to have been a pivotal moment in securing the much-needed ceasefire in the Middle East. But his words last night do seem to have taken the ceasefire deal back to the brink. This is what he said.
As far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday, and if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock, and after that, I would say all hell is going to break out.
Well, President Trump's been meeting King Abdullah of Jordan. He's been asked to take in Palestinians from Gaza, and they spoke a little earlier.
The relationship with Jordan has been very strong, has been with me, and really has been with the country. But I think I've been closer than other presidents to Jordan and what Jordan represents. And it's an honor to have you and your son with us. And if you'd like to say a few words, and thank you very much.
Mr. President, thank you very much for having us in so short after your inauguration. I think just as a testament to what you said is a special relationship between our two countries and the personal relationship of friendship and trust between the two of us. Mr. President, I truly believe that with all the challenges that we have in the Middle East, that I finally see somebody that can take us across the finish line to bring stability, peace, and prosperity to all of us in the region. And it is, I think, our collective responsibility in the Middle East to continue to work with you, to support you, to achieve those lofty goals. So I'm very delighted to be here. And as you said, sir, we've got some very interesting discussions.
Lots of polite words there. Well, let's talk to General Mark Kimmitt, former Assistant Secretary of State on Political Military Affairs to Presidents George Bush. He was also a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. Good evening, General Kimmitt.
Good evening. How are you?
Yes, I'm delighted to have you with us tonight. We heard those words from Donald Trump. We've heard from Benjamin Netanyahu saying that unless the 3 hostages that are due to be released on Saturday are released on time, he will resume the fighting. Where do you think the Gaza ceasefire deal is tonight?
Well, I think the ceasefire deal is exactly as described by the president. If it is not back on track, and now he has raised the stakes, President Trump has raised the stakes in saying all hostages are released, to use the term he had used before, all hell will break loose. Now, to what extent that means, it would be a variety of options, but I think that the president has used that type of rhetoric recently in some other negotiations, particularly with those South American countries that would not take their citizens back when they were deported from the United States. So I think Hamas, even though they have not shown a lot of rationality up to this point, ought to be listening very carefully.
Do you think those words from President Trump did give the Israeli Prime Minister essentially the green light to deliver his threat, to say that, look, I mean, at the moment, Hamas has been talking about a delay to the release of the hostages. It says Israel's violating the agreement. But do you think Donald Trump's words then gave Benjamin Netanyahu the green light to issue his own ultimatum, his own threat to pull out of the deal altogether?
Well, it certainly is the case that there hasn't been a ceasefire in the history of the world where one side or the other, and usually both, have accused of ceasefire violations. I do agree with you that he may have been given a little bit more leash in what he considers to do with regards to the ceasefire, but I don't think many people have taken into account recently the tremendous opposition that the country has against Benjamin Netanyahu now. Even with the hostages being released, a significant majority of the country is against what he has been doing. So one could say he can either double down because he's got nothing to lose, or number two, that he has been listening to his people and may not try to resume the full-scale operations, military operations that they had prior to the ceasefire.
How significant a role do you think Donald Trump is playing in this process? I mean, he'd always said that he wanted to end the war, didn't he?
Well, that's true, and he's not in the habit of starting wars. He's very proud about his record of ending wars and not starting wars. So I don't think we're going to see the 82nd Airborne go into Gaza to join the Israelis in the fight. But I think it's important not simply for the Israelis and the Gazans, but I think the messages that he is sending out is to the wider region. Not necessarily Iran in this case, but certainly the larger Arab countries that many would say for years and years, the only people that haven't been helping the Palestinians are the Arab community in that region.
Donald Trump has repeated his assertion that the US should take control of Gaza, that the civilians should be moved out. He talked about some other beautiful place, but those Arab nations, countries like Jordan and Egypt, have both said that they're not prepared to accept large numbers of displaced civilians from Gaza. Do you think that Donald Trump is serious about that idea of the US essentially taking it over Gaza and removing those that are living there at the moment?
Well, I'd say two things. Number one, as the old saying goes, you can either take Donald Trump literally or you can take him seriously. And I don't think he's really speaking seriously when he's talking about displacing all the Gazans. But I think he is serious about the fact, as I said before, the region is in no mood right now to take more Palestinians in their country. I'm not saying that there's necessarily a racial bias or a presumption and a tendency towards terrorism. But if the countries in the region seriously wanted to help the Palestinian cause, they would allow for some two-way movement of the people as there's a reconstruction of Palestine. Candidly, they don't have to leave Palestine. They don't have to leave Gaza in order to do the reconstruction, as President Trump has said. I mean, again,
but given that, I mean, both Jordan and Egypt and other countries around there have already taken in large numbers of Palestinian refugees. As I'm sure you're aware, I mean, there are historic reasons why the Palestinian people do not want to be forced from their land. And countries, not just Egypt and Jordan, but other big players like Saudi Arabia, Qatar and so on, have insisted that there must be this two-state solution. Doesn't that make it impossible for Donald Trump's plan to be delivered?
No, not at all. 5 times the number of current residents inside of Gaza left Syria and were sheltered and provided for by Turkey. So the countries that say they are not able to absorb that quantity of people have political reasons for saying that, not practical reasons for saying that.
General Mark Kimmitt, former US Assistant Secretary of State. Really good to have you with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.